Hi, and this is Robin from AxesnYarn, and I wanted to make a video for you, just explaining what's happened in the past 24 hours. So, as you can probably tell, I'm sat in bed right now. I'm propped up with cushions, but I am in bed, and that's because yesterday was really bad in terms of my health. It's actually the worst I have been in several years. I've had some really bad days off and on throughout that time, and I've had days where I've needed to do what I'm doing now and basically spend it in bed. But yesterday was, I think, one of, or if not the worst I have been with my ME. And I think it's really difficult for a lot of people who don't have fatigue issues to understand how bad it can be. And this is something I've sort of touched on in blog posts recently about how people judge. When I'm saying people here, I think I'm really talking about benefits assessors. How they judge and how they rate your ability to do things. And the sort of the phrase they use is, or the phrase they're supposed to adhere to is reliably, repeatedly, and another R word, which I've forgotten now. And that basically means that it's not just about doing a task, but it's about whether you're able to do it. Oh, reasonably, that's the other R. Reliably, repeatedly, and reasonably. And actually, it's that reasonably which is the important one. If you can do a task within reasonable boundaries for an able-bodied person, whether you can do it reliably, meaning you could do it whenever you're requested to within reason, whether you can do it whenever you want to or need to, and whether you can do it again. There's no point saying, okay, yeah, you've done it once, but you can't do it again, because it's broken you that much. And the reasonably is a difficult one. And this comes up a lot with walking. So it's, can you walk a certain length, a certain distance? And you'll find that with a lot of people with CFS, ME, other fatigue conditions and chronic pain conditions as well, is that yes, they can walk that distance, and they do so regularly, because the distance they give you as part of your assessment is 50 meters, which actually isn't that far. Like, that might get me some of the way to my nearest bus stop. So if I want to get a bus somewhere, I have to walk more than that. I have to be able to walk 50 meters. That's why the reasonably is important, because a person, an able-bodied person of sort of average health and fitness, wouldn't find that difficult, or even greater distances. It is reasonable for somebody of average health who is able-bodied to walk a mile or two, and to be able to do it. And okay, they might be a little bit tired afterwards. You might appreciate to sit down at the end of it, but they can get up again. It's not having a huge impact on what they do the next day or what they do later that day. might be a little bit tired, but they'll recover from it, and they'll usually recover from it fairly quickly. Which brings me to what I did yesterday. So yesterday I went to Tong Village, which, well, not even right in the centre of the village. I was visiting a horse, somebody and a horse, because I'm considering doing a part loan. So I spent a couple of hours there talking to the person. It was fairly gentle, but still mildly fatiguing. And the plan was that I was going to get the bus home, because part of this visiting them is, if I am doing share, I have to be able to get to them fairly regularly without too much trouble. So I was driven there and dropped off, and then I was going to get the bus home. And it's about a 10-minute drive away from where we live. It's a fairly direct route, actually. It's not too difficult to get to. I knew the buses could be a bit more complicated. There isn't actually a direct bus going from where I live to there. You've got to go a little bit around the houses, but that's okay. So before I went, I looked at Google Maps, I looked at bus maps, I figured out which buses I would need to get and where from. Now, there is a complicating factor, and that's that I don't currently have a working mobile phone, let alone a smartphone with a data connection. That's an entirely different saga. It is a saga. For various reasons, I don't currently have a working smartphone. And also, yesterday was a Sunday, so I don't know when you're watching this, but the day I'm referring to was a Sunday. And if you're in the UK, you know that Sunday services on buses are rare and fickle. So yeah, I spent a couple of hours at this yard looking at the horse, getting to know him. It was really nice, actually. It was lovely. It was a beautiful day as well, really sunny, very warm. It's actually weather conditions which really suit me. I like heat. It's good for my joints, it's good for my pain levels. So I left the yard, I set off. I knew I would have to walk the first section. I knew I had to walk from the yard along the road it's on, because it's a tiny country village on a little country road. So I walked down there. I got to the main road, which is actually the ring road in Leeds, and then I thought, okay, I need to check what buses to get. Now, I'd spent more time there than I'd intended to, so the notes I had taken about which buses to get were now invalid, because it was a different time. But I knew there were several different buses I can get, going in a variety of directions from different stops on the ring road. And I didn't have a smartphone in order to be able to check this, even though I had my Kindle Fire with me, which is a tablet, and I'd opened up Google Maps with all the information on before I left. Because there was no signal, because there was no Wi-Fi, I wasn't able to check that while I was out. So I was left with a choice. I could gamble and go to the nearest bus stop and see if that helped me. If it was the wrong bus stop, then I'd have to walk either to the next stop, or I'd either have to go over the road and try that stop, or I'd have to walk in a different direction and try that stop. And when you've got chronic fatigue, that's actually a really difficult choice to make, because all that walking backwards and forwards and not being able to make a clear choice about where you're going and what you're doing is very, very fatiguing. It takes a lot out of you, especially when it's things like buses, because it's, you walk to one bus and it says, okay, there's a bus going in this direction, but it's not for another 20 minutes. So do you take a chance and walk to a different bus stop and see if there's another bus there which is only leaving in 5 minutes and that might be quicker? Or do you wait there for the one which isn't as direct, but it's going to be, that backwards and forwards is really difficult. when you're able-bodied. It's really frustrating. When you've got fatigue, it's not just frustrating, it actively takes up energy. It leaves you with way less energy than you started with. So the other choice I had was to start walking the direct route, which is the route that we had driven. I knew there was a couple of bus stops on that road, so I thought I might get lucky and there'd be a bus going which would at least take me part of the way. So I started walking. And this being Leeds, this being West Yorkshire, it's a hill, so I started walking. I'd walked down to the bottom of the hill, now I had to start walking up. The first bus stop I got to didn't have any buses going in the right direction, so I carried on walking, went past a couple of junctions, got to another bus stop, checked again. There were different buses on this, but it was a Sunday and the bus that would go in the right direction wouldn't be for, well, it wouldn't even go really in the right direction, it would just go ish in the right direction. That wouldn't be for another hour at that point. About 20 past 3, I think, at this point. The bus, which would go fairly close to where I live, like almost direct, doesn't run on a Sunday, so that was out. Now at this point I was tired and stressed. Walking back to the ring road again was going to be a gamble. It was going to take a lot of energy. I still didn't know if I'd get the right buses when I was there. It was getting late. Well, it was only 20 past 3, but time was going on and I just wanted to be home. And at this point I was fatigued. I was already starting to feel fatigued, and when that happens, your cognitive impairment starts to go. And if you've got any sort of anxiety as well, that makes it worse, because you just focus. You start to get stressed. You're not sure what your options are. You're not sure what you can do. And it's very difficult to think through what your options are, because that takes energy. It takes mental energy to do that. And my choices felt very limited. And the only thing I could focus on was get home, just walk, keep walking. Maybe I'll find a bus, or at the very least get somewhere with Wi-Fi so I can use my tablet and ask Ian to come and pick me up. The only place I knew had Wi-Fi, and again, this is the fatigue limits your choices and makes making these decisions harder. The only place I knew had Wi-Fi was the Costa Coffee in Family Shops, which was over a mile away at this point. I could maybe try other places, but again, that takes emotional and mental and physical energy to be able to divert from this very narrow track, and divert from this route, and to go into places and see if I can get the Wi-Fi password and see if I can hang out there for long enough to use it, and maybe divert and not find Wi-Fi, and then I've got to go back. So yeah, I'd ended up with this very narrow focus of just keep walking, get to the Costa Coffee. I can sit and have a drink and then carry on walking, or I can sit and have a drink and message Ian and get him to pick me up there. So I walked, and I walked, and I walked. This is uphill. It's quite a steep hill actually at this point. I stopped at one point, had a drink of water because I had my water bottle with me. I made the mistake of sitting down. Getting up was very hard. And I kept walking. And I kept walking. And it was getting hard. And I was getting very tired. But all I could do was keep walking. And I'd keep thinking, I'd just get to the end of the road. I'll just get to the end of the next section. I'll just get through this bit of road and it'll be fine. You know, I'm getting closer to my destination and it'll be fine. And it was becoming harder and harder and harder. And I was slowing down, and my legs. So it's really difficult to describe and to find the right words. My legs weren't hurting, but they were so tired. The muscles were so tired. Like, it was a tangible thing. Like, if it was pain, it would be much easier to describe, because, you know, there's feelings like, oh, they were screaming in pain, they were burning, you know, that. Except it wasn't pain, it was just fatigue. My muscles felt like weights, they felt like lead. Moving them was difficult. I was absolutely hyper aware of every kilojoule of energy which was being used to move my legs, and it was starting to become a conscious thing. Walking isn't normally a conscious effort. We're not normally consciously moving the muscles which move our legs to allow us to walk, and yet I was with this, and I got to the top of the hill and I was still about quarter of a mile, third of a mile away from the cafe, and I was struggling. I was now moving so slowly. I'm normally actually a fairly fast walker. I've got short legs, so it doesn't always look like I am, but I'm a fairly fast walker. I've got a good pace on me, and that's how I'd started off, which was also part of the problem. Because in my mind, I'm a fairly healthy, active person. I'm much healthier and more active than my body actually is. It's because that's what I used to be like before I got sick. So when I start off, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a couple of miles. My brain is saying it's a couple of miles, we can walk a couple of miles, and just sets off at my normal pace. Even if my body is going, no, excuse me, we can't walk a couple of miles, please slow down. And my brain's just going, no, it'll be fine. So I set off at my normal pace. And then by, 3/4 of the way in, I'm so slow. Like, I mean, slow. Step, 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 step. Just keep repeating. In fact, at this point, I was practically in tears. And I was actually saying out loud, step, 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 and keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And I was having to repeat these mantras to myself just to will my legs to keep going, because I was now quite close to my destination and I had no choice. The only other choice was to stop. And even though my body really wanted to stop, I couldn't, because then I would just be, well, probably not even sat at the edge of the road. I would have been curled up at the edge of the road, unable to move, unable to contact anyone, and just hoping that somebody would help me. So it felt like my only choice was to keep moving. And I did. And it was painful. Again, painful is almost not the right word. It wasn't physically painful. It was physically exhausting. It was physically difficult. It was mentally painful, because all I wanted to do was to stop and sleep. I managed to get to the cafe. And one of the things which had really pushed me on is this was a Sunday, like I said. I kind of made the decision to walk this far, and it was 3:20. This is the UK, so a lot of you here are familiar that we do Sunday opening hours in the UK. So I knew there was a really good chance that the cafe was going to be shutting at 4 o'clock, so I had to get there by 4 o'clock. So I walked and I walked and I managed to stumble into the cafe by basically just falling against the door and use my body weight to open the door and then stumble in and get to the counter. I was leaning on the counter really heavily. I was practically holding on to it to keep myself up. I was shaking. I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't communicate properly. I just really wanted a cold drink. Some bit of my brain was working enough to go, yes, you want a cold drink and a sweet snack and a salty snack, and these things will help. So I got a packet of crisps and some dairy-free biscuits and an iced coffee, and I was able, they don't always have the Wi-Fi password up, but they're happy to give it out, and I was able to ask for the password, stumbled to the nearest table, fell into a seat there. I was so lucky that the table right next to the counter was actually free. Sent a message to Ian, which literally, it was 3 lines, just said, help, can't walk, I'm at Costa. And then, yeah, drank my drink, ate the crisps, ate the biscuits. Ian turned up, and as soon as he sat down next to me, I just burst into tears. Because I just had nothing left. And it was scary, and it was really hard, and I didn't know what to do. And he was there to help me, and it was really important. So he said, "Well, get me into the car and get me home." And I couldn't stand up. So yeah, I couldn't stand up. Ian was helping me up. And I had to, he practically picked me up out of the chair, hoisted me up, got me on my feet. I had an arm around his waist and his arms were around my shoulders, and my other arm was holding onto his arm. We got me, God, we're talking 6-7 meters from where I was sat through the door and to his car, because he'd managed to park right in front of the Costa. Got me into the car, drove home, which from there is like a 3-minute drive maybe. Then we had to get me out of the car. Unfortunately, in this case, our house has got 5 steps up from the pavement level to where the door is. And with his help, I managed to get up the first one. And the next one, he went to unlock the front door so that he could continue helping me up and get me in. And then I couldn't do the next set of steps. Just couldn't do it. I tried. I couldn't lift my legs that high. I couldn't push myself up that high. And I just sat down. I didn't even have the energy to sit up. I just crumpled and ended up lying on the concrete crying because I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't move. I couldn't get into the house. I was like 2 meters away from the front door and I couldn't get into the house. And Ian, I'm really lucky actually that I've got a partner who I live with, who is able to help me like this. And he's, you know, not only is he willing to help, he's also able-bodied and quite strong. So he was able to pick me up, physically picked me up. He was now carrying me, and he had to carry me into the house, through the door, into the living room, and put me on the sofa. And that was horrible. It was really horrible. So from there, I rested on the sofa for a bit, then I needed to go to the bathroom, and I just wanted to go to bed. I was so exhausted. I just wanted to go to bed. So Ian helped me go upstairs. I half crawled up, half was pushed. Supported, went to the bathroom, got up to the bedroom, and just crashed out for a couple of hours, had some dinner, crashed out again. So I slept, obviously, I had a really good long sleep last night. So it's 11:44 now, AM. I got up this morning just after 9, went downstairs, got breakfast, ate my breakfast, had a coffee, watched some YouTube videos, and I was just exhausted again, so I've come back up to bed. I can get more done here. It's less energy for me to be in bed because I'm not having to keep myself sat upright. It means if I need to have a sleep, I can just fall asleep here. So I can actually get more done sat in bed. You know, if people are talking about what disabled people can do and what people with ME are capable of and chronic fatigue are capable of, well, yeah, I walked 2.5 miles yesterday uphill. But then I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand up. That's not reasonable, it's not reliable, it's not repeatable. I know I ended up curled up on a concrete floor crying and needing to be picked up because of it. I ended up having to eat my dinner in bed last night because of it. I'm back in bed today because of it. I'm likely going to spend all day here. Tomorrow, I don't know how I'll be. I know I'm probably going to have to cancel some plans later in the week because of it. Yeah, it really sucks. I'm not... Miami's a lot better than it has been recently. Like the past couple of years, it's been getting better than it was. I'm managing it better. I'm more capable, I know, than some people who suffer from it. I do get out and I do things. And sometimes that makes it more difficult because I'm like, oh yeah, I can do these things, I'm fine. I can trick myself into thinking that I'm fine, and I'm not. I need to be more careful. So yeah, when somebody says they've got ME or chronic fatigue, they say they can't do something, just believe them. Even if you've seen them do it before, doesn't mean they can do it now. Even if you think you've seen them doing it, it doesn't mean they've done it without consequences. They haven't done it in a reasonable fashion. You know, you might say that after walking 2.5 miles you're tired. And yeah, you are. Your legs might be aching and you might be a bit tired. But it's not the same. If somebody with ME says I can't because it will make my fatigue bad, they're not talking tired. They're not talking something that a bit of a sit down will make better. They're not talking about something that they'll feel better the next day. They're talking about a fatigue that hurts and that lasts and that screws everything up and means that the activity isn't reliable and it isn't repeatable, and it isn't reasonable. And that's hard enough for the person themselves to, I'm going to say, come to terms with in some cases, but just to remember and to work with, because it's really complex. Because you might say, like, I literally did a 5-mile walk the other week and it was tough. It took me a few days to recover from, and I had to prepare for it. I rested beforehand. It was flat. I had some help. We stopped and had breaks in the middle, and it took me a few days to recover from. But I did a 6-mile walk the other week without collapsing in tears and needing to be carried. But this week, well, probably because I did the 6-mile walk the other week, this week I shouldn't have walked as far as I did. I was an unreasonable level of tired after half a mile. I was a dangerous level of fatigue by the end of it. So yeah, just sometimes this stuff's really hard. I'm sorry this is a really long video, but I'm not really doing anything fast at the moment. So yeah, I just thought it would be good to share this with people.